15 budgeting tips for your daily life. It's going to be a lot, but I can't wait because it's going to be so helpful for those of you that are like, ugh, about budgeting, or some of you that have tried and you're like, it's just not working. So the very first tip is that I want you to create a budget to zero before the month begins, which is called a zero-based budget. So, and you're going to list out all of your expenses, including giving and saving, and your goal is your income for the month minus everything that you plan to do with money equals zero. So every dollar has.
So my first advice, my first tip for budgeting is write a budget.
Okay. No, but Duncan, I have a question for you. What do you think about the zero-based budget thing? Is there anything about that strikes you in any particular way?
Well,
any opinion about that?
what she's, I mean, whenever you do a budget or even like a balance sheet for a business, right? The bottom line should always be zero, right? Most people don't understand it, but it's So if I'm doing my budget, it's like I make $5,000 a month, let's say, and this is my rent and insurance and car and all this stuff, right? Then whatever's left over, if there's you want to have a surplus at the end, right? So your positive money after all your expenses, and then whatever that surplus is, then the last expense is going to be savings, and then you just put that in there.
I mean, I take a savings first approach to a certain degree because I'm a natural born saver,
Right.
And so I deal with that first. But I agree with you in that if there's anything left over in what you're figuring, you allot it back to something.
Right.
Ideally savings, but you apply it to something. So I do agree with her on the zero-based budget idea, but what I wonder is what type of budgeting isn't one? I mean, theoretically, it should all be a zero-based budget, regardless of what budgeting strategy or tool you use, because the point of a budget is that you are giving all of the money in assignment and you are allotting all of the money to something.
Right, but that's my point, is tip number one, right? We're doing the 15 tips for budgeting. Tip number one is just do a budget. You can Google how to do a budget. I mean, they'll walk you through it. Go to like Investopedia, right? Budget. In the search function, they'll tell you how to do a budget.
Maybe it'd be more accurate to rename that tip and rename that tip something like, make sure you allot all the money to something. Don't leave your surplus in your checking, right?
Right. I would, yeah, for most people, when you're first doing a budget, my first advice is you need to understand that for a lot of people, if you're running at a deficit, that somewhere you're either going to need to make cuts or you're going to constantly be borrowing money, right? Which you don't want to be doing month to month to month, right? Because it always puts you in a dangerous position where you're not saving anything, you don't have any emergency cash, so if something goes wrong, you're kind of screwed. So that would be my first tip, is just, be prepared that you might have to start making some sacrifices, especially if you're talking to somebody who's having problems with a budget, right? Or needs that kind of help, right? Most people have some sort of idea of what their budget is, right? Even if they don't have a real detailed one. But, most people, if you're doing this kind of thing where they're looking at 15 tips or how to do it, they're either people like us who are really interested in it, right? Or the people she really wants to be targeting, which are people that don't have a budget and can't figure out why they're broke at the end of the month.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just kind of as simple as like, okay, yeah, write a budget. Okay, great. But we're already sort of there. It just seems kind of like it's a waste of a tip, right? It's like the kid trying to fill in the book report at the last second, right? And fill for time. The Great Gatsby was a book about a guy named Gatsby who was really great. That's just what it feels like she's doing. And we're playing her at like 1.25 speed. And it's taken her this long just to get to, hey, write a budget.